Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Okay, let's watch some World War II stuff, guys. Mark Felton Productions, awesome channel. Start off the day with some learning. Luftwaffe over the Ardennes. Okay, World War II, obviously. Forgotten aerial battle of the Bulge. So the Battle of the Bulge, correct me if I'm wrong, was when the Allies had already landed in Normandy and were pushing towards Germany. I know Germany kind of included. Anyways, and it was the last sort of counteroffensive by the Germans in the West. I think I'm right. I'm not positive, but let's go. Phones away.
When people think of the Ardennes offensive and the Luftwaffe, the only operation that comes to mind is Bodenplatte, or baseplate, on New Year's Day 1945. But in fact the Luftwaffe was very active in the entire Ardennes campaign, a fact often not acknowledged in history books. Today marks the 78th anniversary of the start of the Ardennes offensive, Hitler's last massive attack in the West.
Okay.
Following the German defeat in Normandy that culminated with a headlong retreat of the shattered forces through...
See how fast that reloading was? Watch, just shot one. Boom, out, in. Boom. Look how fast look how fast from the point he... I know I'm... Watch, his hand is literally on the casing. Boom, in. Fire.
Following the German defeat in Normandy that culminated with a headlong retreat of the shattered forces through France to the borders of Germany itself, the Allies could not keep pace with the German withdrawal, largely due to supply problems, as the Allies were still bringing in much of their supplies across the Normandy beaches until a sizable port could be captured and repaired. That port would be Antwerp in Belgium. The Germans scored a notable late-war victory in September 1944 when
Antwerp is in... I thought it was in Netherlands.
Hitler's forces in the Netherlands successfully defeated Field Marshal Sir Bernard Montgomery's Operation Market Garden, an audacious attempt to capture a series of bridges far behind enemy lines to allow the armour and infantry divisions, the British 30 Corps, to punch over the Rhine into the vital Ruhr industrial region and end the war, hopefully by Christmas 1944. Hitler began to believe that a substantial offensive in the West might yet shift the balance in his favour.
It almost doesn't even look like him. Is it just me, or does that... He's probably just not well shaven or anything. He looks kind of, something's off. I don't know.
Wacht am Rhein, or Watch on the Rhine, was developed. The initial attack involved 410,000 German troops and over 1,400 tanks and armoured vehicles. They would be launched through the lightly defended Ardennes region of Belgium and Luxembourg, with the aim of reaching and crossing the Meuse River and then moving on to recapture Antwerp. The effects of this would have been to split the US and British armies from each other and close off a major supply hub close to the front. Most of the German generals involved in the plan doubted that the German forces, with their manpower, training and fuel shortages, could pull off such an audacious plan. But in the suspicious atmosphere following the July 1944 bomb plot against Hitler, few were willing to risk their necks by challenging him. Wacht am Rhein, the name later changed to Operation Herbstnebel, or Autumn Fog, depended on two factors for success. Firstly, surprise, which the Germans largely achieved, the Americans believing that the Ardennes region in winter was unsuitable for armoured operations. The Americans also thought that the Germans were basically on their knees militarily, which they were.
Isn't that almost the exact mistake that the French made in the beginning of the war? That it was almost unimpenetrable, and then they penetrated it. But okay.
The Americans also thought that the Germans were basically on their knees militarily, which they were not. The second factor was the weather. Mid-December in the Ardennes would be gloomy, foggy and cold, developing into heavy snowstorms and icy conditions later in the month. Such weather would ground most Allied aircraft and cloak the movements of the three German armies as they advanced to the westwards. Allied air power had proved decisive in the campaign in France, fighter bombers destroying supply convoys, creating fear and panic among German troops, and preventing German panzer divisions from fighting a mobile war, which they were designed to do. However, the winter weather in the Ardennes would also cause the Germans problems, for it would also ground much of the Luftwaffe aircraft campaign in France to the west, fighter bombers destroying supply convoys, creating fear and panic among...
What are they firing? Those look like modern day like rockets that would be sent out of jets.
And panic among German troops and preventing German panzer divisions from fighting a mobile...
Are those planes firing like RPGs essentially?
War, which they were designed to do. However, the winter weather in the Ardennes would also cause the Germans problems, for it would also ground much of the Luftwaffe aircraft destined to support the German advance. The first significant Luftwaffe operations occurred on the 17th of December 1944, one day into the offensive, when 600 sorties were flown, including a few ground attack missions, strafing US positions and vehicle convoys. Once darkness fell, a further 250 sorties were launched by night fighters, penetrating deeper behind the Allied lines, hitting major communication centers like Liège. The two Allied tactical air commands operating in support of the defense of the Ardennes also attempted ground attack missions, but bad weather hampered their efforts. Allied fighters also had to contend with a sudden dramatic increase in German fighter activity right across the region, as the Luftwaffe tried to keep at least 150 fighters a day airborne to protect the advancing ground forces from US and British aerial interference. During the critical high water mark of the German advance on the 23rd of December, a Russian high had descended on the Ardennes region, with frozen ground and clear skies. And the Allies unleashed the full power of their air forces to interfere with German operations. For example, 669 fighter bomber sorties were flown, and medium bombers hit German supply lines that stretched back well into western Germany. However, these longer-range missions were met by a very strong Luftwaffe fighter response. 624 US...
That's the thing about railway is...
stretched back well into western Germany.
You don't even have to strike the cars or the train itself. A railway just seems so vulnerable because it just strike. It's like a chain link. You break one link and the whole chain is useless. And the same thing. I'm sure it's not terribly difficult to repair a railway track, but I'm just thinking like anyways.
However, these longer-range missions were met by a very strong Luftwaffe fighter response. 624 US bombers attacked targets, and in terrific air battles, 35 were shot down and 182 damaged, losses not seen on the Western Front for some time. In order to counter the very active Luftwaffe fighter force challenging US and British air operations over the Ardennes, strikes were launched on Christmas Eve against 12 Luftwaffe airfields on the eastern side of the Rhine to smash the fighters up on the ground and wreck the base infrastructures. These raids were very successful. Of the 12 airfields attacked, 8 were out of action for an average of 8 days, which was absolutely critical to Luftwaffe attempts to support the Ardennes offensive, while a further 4 suffered only minor damage and could continue operations on a reduced scale. With clear skies on Christmas Day, an enormous air effort was made by the Allies to support US operations to contain and then strike at the German Bulge, with 6,194 sorties undertaken against a much reduced Luftwaffe fighter activity. The damage done to German supply convoys was enormous and massively impacted the German ability to reach the Meuse. The erosion of the Luftwaffe fighter force was also very bad. Between the 23rd and 27th of December 1944, 346 pilots were killed in combat or taken prisoner, with the worst single day, Christmas Eve, seeing 106 killed or captured. Hitler, however, was determined to restart the faltering offensive, and the Luftwaffe had planned a very large operation initially to hit Allied airfields and destroy as many aircraft on the ground as possible, but this had eventually been delayed for a month. However, by late December 1944, the Germans were now able to launch this assault, codenamed Operation Bodenplatte or Baseplate. This attack would also support a fresh German offensive being launched south of the Ardennes in an area of France called Alsace. The new offensive designed to draw off American forces from the southern flank of the Ardennes penetration. The codename of this operation was Nordwind or North Wind. Penetration. The codename of this operation was Nordwind.
So I was trying to look at the sticky thing, the stick that they had to... I was watching a more modern artillery group and how they did it, and they had this big stick they had to shove the ammo into, and I just wondered if that was a World War II equivalent. Never mind, just forget it.
Or North Wind. Bodenplatte, the heavily delayed German aerial assault, was launched on the 1st of January 1945, when 1,035 Luftwaffe aircraft managed to destroy 138 US and British aircraft at bases across Belgium and Holland. A further 111 were damaged and 70 were lost in aerial combat. But like the Great Ardennes Offensive, Bodenplatte was really an own goal for the Germans that weakened their defensive efforts in the west. The Luftwaffe lost 304 aircraft in this operation, including many of the most experienced combat leaders with them, with 214 aircrew killed or captured. The Luftwaffe was never able again to mount a significant operation in the west following Bodenplatte. If you'd like to know more about Operations Nordwind and Bodenplatte, see my videos on these fascinating subjects, link in the end screen. Many thanks for watching, please subscribe and share, and also visit my audiobook channel, War Stories with Mark Felton. You can also help to support both of my channels at PayPal and Patreon, details in the description box below.
So, at what point was the switch from Germans, I don't know if anyone's going to have the answer, of Germans feeling like, oh my God, like, we are unstoppable. Clearly, after they defeated France extremely quickly and had the not treaty, but the pact with the Soviet Union, you know, they conquered Poland together and they weren't fighting each other. And I wonder, like, at that point where France is defeated, all of mainland Europe is not a threat, and you have Norway, which you beat the British off of, and you captured Norway, and you're not at war with the Soviet Union yet, okay? At that point, I've seen so many videos on, like, alternate history. It seems like there's nothing that the Axis powers in World War II could have done because of a lack of oil and oil infrastructure in nearby oil places. Like I know Bulgaria was a big part of their oil, but that was the whole reason for going into Russia. Not the whole reason, but to capture Russian oil fields in the Caucasus. But I just wonder when that turn point of, like, 1942, late 1942, where it was, we're unstoppable, to, oh crap, we're screwed. You know, it just seemed to flip so fast, and I wonder when that occurred exactly. Maybe Stalingrad, but I think probably before that. Cool video, love learning, and I'll catch you guys next time, all right? See you guys. Bye. Keep recommending on the Discord. See you.